Let me set the scene for you. Imagine yourself in the UK in 2021 during lockdowns. You're walking alone from a friend's home after 9 p.m. when a police officer stops you minutes away from your home. You might be in trouble since you're supposed to not leave your house. You're probably expecting questions from the officer, and a bit scared you explain why you're out. And if all goes well, you'll get away with the warning. But one thing you would never expect is to be assaulted and murdered by said police officer, right? Well, 33-year-old Sarah Everard wasn't expecting that either, but that's exactly what happened to her. Sarah was in the company of a police officer, an enforcer of the law. So why and how did this happen to her? Sarah would trust a police officer more than anyone out there in this situation, and surely you would too. But following the events of this case, 47% of women in the UK state that they lost trust in the UK police. The brutal and animalistic killing of Sarah Everard spotlighted that the UK police, people who are supposed to guard us and keep us safe, had a predator within their ranks, and they were doing the exact opposite. And Sarah, tragically, found herself on the receiving end of this monster's violence. Sarah Everard was born in June of 1987 to parents Sue and Jeremy Everard in Surrey. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, having a sister named Katie and a brother named James. In 2005, Sarah enrolled in Durham University. She graduated in 2008 and moved to London, where she got a job in marketing. At the time of the case, Sarah was living in the Brixton Hill area, and she was working as a marketing executive for a digital media agency. Sarah, by all accounts, was defined as a woman with a good head on her shoulders. Sarah was also a very supportive friend. According to her friend Rose, who had known her since university, Sarah was there for her when her mother passed away and always lent an ear to listen and a shoulder to cry on. Sarah, at the time of the case in 2021, was going through the same turmoil as anyone else in the world. The lockdowns took a toll on everyone, including Sarah. The uncertainty of things returning to normal and restrictions weighed heavily on us all. But no one knew that a fateful day in March would change Sarah's life forever and leave everyone else to deal with the repercussions and the aftermath. It was March 3rd, 2021. Sarah, like the rest of us, was tired of being cooped up at home and working on a screen, and she got excited when Rose suggested that they catch up at her house on Leithwaite Road near Clapham Junction, just west of Clapham Common. So Sarah got ready and went out to meet her friend for a much-needed catch-up session. Feeling good after meeting her friend, Sarah left Rose's home at around 9 p.m. and was seen on CCTV footage at Broward Road Junction. Phone activity showed that Sarah was talking to her boyfriend, Josh, and was making plans to meet him the next day. The phone call lasted about 15 minutes, and at 9:28 p.m., she was seen on Poinders Road via a doorbell camera. 4 minutes later, she was seen walking down that same road towards her home by a police dash cam. But the next morning, Josh tried calling Sarah, but she wasn't picking up her phone, which was bizarre as they had plans to meet up soon. When Sarah didn't show up at the designated time, Josh got extremely worried. Not only that, but Sarah also failed to show up for a virtual work meeting. So all of this was very unsettling. After 8 p.m. on March 4th, after his calls got no answers, Josh reported his 33-year-old girlfriend missing. An investigation for a missing person was launched immediately. The police looked at the surveillance footage near her house, and when they checked cameras right across Sarah's street and saw that there was no sign of her, everyone felt that something terribly wrong must have happened, because it meant that she hadn't made it home after all. Sarah's family made the journey to London to put up posters to help look for Sarah and find any clues and leads about her whereabouts. Sarah wasn't the type of person to just up and leave. There was nothing alarming about her behavior, and according to Rose, she seemed normal and happy. I mean, as happy as someone can be in the midst of a miserable lockdown. The investigators insinuated that the path that she was walking on was quite remote, but this was something Sarah did often. She was an active person and preferred to walk if she could. The walk from Rose's home to hers was about 50 minutes long, but the path was well lit, and even though people weren't supposed to be out and about during lockdown, Sarah felt comfortable enough to just make the walk home rather than take a taxi. The detectives were literally at a dead end as they had no idea where Sarah could be. But something provided a significant lead in the case. It was a bus CCTV camera. The bus was driving down Poinders Road and caught Sarah on camera. But she wasn't alone. See, there was another person with her, a man to be exact, and on the side of the road, a white vehicle was parked with its blinkers on. Another car's dash cam caught sight of the same car at 9:38 p.m., but this time both of the car doors were open. This was a lead for the police, and they now had to find this man quickly, as he was clearly the last person to have interacted with Sarah. As the detectives were searching for the man with the white car, they ended up getting a lead, and it was from a car rental company in Dover, Kent, almost a 2-hour drive away from London. The white Vauxhall Crossland was rented by a man named Wayne Couzens. But Wayne wasn't your average Joe just renting a car for the weekend. He was a serving Metropolitan police officer. So why was he now being tracked down as a suspect in a homicide investigation? So why was Wayne talking to Sarah that day? Was Sarah in trouble? And where was she now? Well, to get to that, we have to get to know Wayne. Wayne Couzens was born in 1972 and previously worked as a mechanic in his family's garage. He later enlisted in the Territorial Army as a private, and as years went by, he went on to apply to become a police officer on 3 separate occasions, but failed every single time. Finally, in June of 2006, he was accepted to join the Kent Police after being discharged from the Army on grounds of failing to meet training obligations. Now, I'm not sure how this guy managed to join the police force after being forced out of the Army, but anyway, by 2020, several years later, he had changed locations and departments and was now tasked with supervising the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Branch, which is basically the protection of government properties in the UK. What was interesting and rather shocking was that Wayne had not gone through the tedious vetting process at the time of recruitment, and to add to the dumpster fire that was Wayne's recruitment, he didn't even complete a 2-year probation period, which is mandatory if someone wants to join the Metropolitan Police Force. So you can already tell Wayne was inexperienced, untrained, and had no business in the field of service that he was in. Not only was Wayne a police officer, but he was a 43-year-old man and a father of 2 children, so let's just add that to the stress of police work. But getting back to the topic, what was Wayne doing on the night of March 3rd? And why was Sarah crossing paths with a police officer? Well, the police had this same question, and the only way to get answers was to get them from Wayne. So the police went to Dover and arrested Wayne on suspicion of kidnapping Sarah. When the police questioned Wayne, at first, he claimed he didn't recognize Sarah. But then things got weird. After feigning ignorance for a couple of minutes, Wayne proceeded to spin a story involving a gang that apparently wanted him to kidnap Sarah and had ordered him to bring her to them in exchange for money, as he was in financial strain. If he failed, then his family would be the one to face the gang's wrath. This immediately got the police suspicious of Wayne, but that feeling only grew even more, and his charges were now raised to murder, even though Sarah hadn't been found yet. But the reason for this sudden change in Wayne's charges was because of Wayne's recent activity on the night of March 3rd. See, he left London hours after Sarah had gone missing and was in Kent in the early morning hours of March 4th. He then returned his rental car at 8:30 a.m. the same day. This made his plan seem, well, rather calculated. He only rented the car long enough for Sarah to go missing, and more or less, as soon as she was reported missing, the car was returned. The timing was just wild. But March 10th was the day when the search for Sarah ended, but not in the way you might expect. Rather than Sarah being found safe and sound and everyone being excited to have her back, well, the opposite was true. The discovery was dreadful for the Everard family and everyone in the UK. The police searched Hodes Wood, an area near Ashford, where Wayne coincidentally owned a piece of land. Police discovered something just 110 yards away from Wayne's plot, and it was a large bag in a shallow pond. And inside, there were human remains. 2 days later, on March 12th, the remains found in the pond were identified through dental records as those of 33-year-old Sarah Everard. According to the autopsy results carried out by William Harvey Hospital, Sarah's cause of death was neck compression, presumably by a police belt, and there was an indication that she, heartbreakingly, might have been taken advantage of as well. Whatever happened to Sarah that evening, it was awful. Based on phone activity, CCTV footage, and location data, the police were able to piece together a timeline of events that took place on the night of March 3rd. Wayne had just finished his 12-hour shift at 7 a.m. on the day of March 3rd. He was then seen picking up the white Vauxhall Crossland from the rental company at 4:45 p.m. Between 8 p.m. and 9:23 p.m., Wayne was seen at West London Tesco getting a pack of hair ties, and he then was seen at Poinders Road. At 9:34 p.m., the bus CCTV camera caught Sarah and Wayne talking to each other, and it's implied that an off-duty Wayne saw Sarah walking on the road and stopped her, showed her his badge, and proceeded to handcuff her and load her into the white car. All the while, Sarah thought she was getting apprehended by a legitimate policeman. But in reality, he was just using his badge of authority to kidnap her. Now, Sarah was seen as compliant and obedient in the footage. She didn't try to fight because she thought that she was in trouble with the police, as walking or even leaving the house during lockdown was prohibited. She was probably expecting to go to a nearby police station, but Wayne had other plans. See, after loading Sarah into the car, which obviously wasn't a police car, Wayne drove all the way to Kent and then transferred Sarah into his personal car. On March 4th, between 11:53 a.m. and 12:57 p.m., Wayne's phone pinged in Shepherdswell. This was the time and location where it's believed that Wayne likely revealed his awful plan and began taking advantage of Sarah. I can't even imagine what Sarah must have been going through. The whole situation is bad enough, but all of this at the hands of a police officer. But after the deed was done, at 2:34 a.m., Wayne was seen buying drinks at a Dover gas station. And it's believed after this, he strangled Sarah with his police belt and ended her life, which at this point just feels so senseless. I mean, you already got what you wanted, just let the girl go. But he didn't. Wayne was later captured on CCTV between 3:22 and 6:32 a.m. on Hodeswood in Ashford, and he then returned the car to the company at 8:26 a.m. on March 4th, having driven more than 300 miles. He then got back into his personal car, and at 9:21 a.m., it's thought that he disposed of Sarah's phone by tossing it into the watercourse in Sandwich, Kent. This was the time when Sarah's phone became unreachable, and her boyfriend's calls didn't go through. On March 5th, Wayne was seen at a BP gas station in Whitefield buying a can of gasoline, and then he made his way back to Hodeswood at 12:37 p.m., where he burned Sarah's body inside of a refrigerator. But he wasn't done yet. At 1:47 p.m., he was seen buying large plastic bags, and 2 days later, on March 7th, he went back to Hodeswood to dispose of Sarah's remains in a pond. The large bags that Wayne had bought were consistent with the ones found at the scene that Sarah's remains were found in. But here's where it gets a little weird. Around the same time, Wayne told his coworkers that he was stressed and didn't feel like carrying a firearm anymore. Then on March 7th, he took a leave from work, claiming he was under the weather. But weirdly enough, when he came back, he handed in his police equipment, including his police belt and handcuffs. At the time, no one had any idea that these were the same items he used to subdue and ultimately kill Sarah. A police officer, a man who took an oath to protect the lives of civilians, turned out to be a murderer. But why? Even the most heartless of killers usually have a motive, but what was Wayne's motive? Did he know Sarah, or was it really just an unfortunate case of Sarah unknowingly crossing paths with a perpetrator who just wanted someone to take advantage of? Well, several more shocking revelations came out about Wayne as the court proceedings took place. Wayne, when he was arrested in his home in Deal, had erased all of his phone data 40 minutes prior to the police arriving at his house. After his second arrest on March 11th, Wayne was hospitalized twice for a head injury, both of which were self-inflicted. The reason why Wayne hurt himself is still unknown, but it's unsettling nonetheless. By March 12th, Wayne was charged with kidnapping and murder. And on March 13th, he appeared in Westminster Magistrates Court and was held at Belmarsh Prison. Following his arrest, a lot of grisly details came out about Wayne and his violent and inappropriate past behaviors. See, Wayne had been charged with 4 counts of indecent exposure, one having taken place just a couple of days before Sarah's attack. Not only this, but Wayne had also forced himself on a drag worker in a pub in 2018. It was also revealed that Wayne and 2 other fellow coworkers, Jonathan Cobbin and Joel Borders, shared very inappropriate, racist, misogynistic, and homophobic messages in a WhatsApp group, which makes the whole drag worker assault all the more strange. But if that wasn't enough, media personnel weren't safe from the clutches of violent Wayne either. A radio presenter, Emma B., who worked on BBC Radio and Heart 106.2, also came forward with her own experience with Wayne that involved him indecently exposing himself to her in a dark alley in Greenwich in 2008, almost 13 years prior to Sarah's attack. Emma said that she tried to report Wayne, but when she went to the police station, the officers laughed at her and dismissed her. To add to Wayne's list of inappropriate behaviors, he had a nickname among his peers that I can't repeat here, but he got this nickname because of how uncomfortable he made women feel. And mind you, the coworkers who played along with this and even gave him a playful nickname, they were also police officers. Just let that sink in. This man was literally a known predator who dwelled within the ranks of the local police, and not one single officer did anything about it. They just laughed it off and crowned him with the ridiculous nickname. With all of this now out in the open, and with Wayne's true intentions now being on public display, on June 8th of 2021, Wayne pleaded guilty to the charges for the assault and murder of Sarah. Wayne also confessed that the murder was totally random and that he didn't know Sarah beforehand, which makes all of this all the more terrifying. To think that Wayne, a police officer who you would assume is a safe person to be with if you're out alone, was looking for a victim to exercise his violent behavior on, is just beyond belief. Wayne's sentencing was held on September 29, 2021. Although Wayne's defense attorney, Jim Sturman QC, tried to persuade Lord Justice Fulford to impose life imprisonment with parole, in the end, Wayne Couzens was sentenced to life in prison with a whole life order. A whole life order is pretty much the most serious criminal penalty imposed for any crime in the UK. This basically means that the criminal's entire life takes place within the confines of a prison now. They have zero chance of being released and will never see the free world again. In fact, Wayne Couzens was the first person in history to receive a life sentence with a whole life order for a singular murder of one civilian. That just goes to show how serious the court system was about getting this serial offender off the streets. In October of 2022, Wayne tried to appeal his conviction, but it was obviously denied by the Court of Appeals. In April of 2023, it was brought to light that Wayne was somehow still entitled to a police pension of £7,000 a year. But the mayor of London put an end to this very quickly. Even so, Wayne still might be entitled to his pre-met pensions, but even this may be taken away. We'll just have to wait and see. But remember Wayne's co-workers, Joel and Jonathan? Well, they were also jailed for sending offensive messages on WhatsApp. So they got what was coming to them as well. But all this aside, following the unspeakable loss of Sarah, there were tremors and ripples of anger among both men and women, not just in the UK, but in other countries as well. Not only in the public, but also women working in the government lost faith and trust in the police force. And I mean, can you blame them? Sarah Everard's case and the actions of the UK police after the fact led to many public outbursts, and the police once again displayed incompetence and utter abuse of power. Exhibit A was the vigil held for Sarah in Clapham Common on March 13th of 2021. It was attended by hundreds of people, including Catherine Duchess of Cambridge, and the place was littered with flowers and words of support and love for Sarah's grieving family. Large groups of people gathered around the park to listen to the speeches of Sisters Uncut, a British feminist group, and that was when an otherwise peaceful gathering quickly fell apart. Police swarmed the area, and 4 arrests were made on the grounds of breaching lockdown orders. The commotion led to the police trampling the flowers left for Sarah, and people were subdued, handcuffed, and many police officers were also assaulted, and it was just an overall mess of a scene. On September 14th, 2023, 2 years after what went down, the Metropolitan Police came forward with their apology and paid substantially for the damages of that night. Multiple vigils took place throughout London, and the cities of Birmingham, Bristol, Cardiff, Edinburgh, Leeds, Nottingham, Liverpool, and even Sheffield. It's safe to say that after Sarah's passing, the police came under the radar of the public, and the law enforcement agencies were criticized not only for their display of violence at the vigil, but also for their inefficiency in preventing Sarah's death, now that the laundry list of Wayne's charges and wrongdoings were now out in the open. But that didn't stop the Metropolitan Police officials from giving yet another brainless solution for stopping crimes of a similar nature. I swear there's got to be something in the water, because no one is this blind or ignorant naturally. But officials came forward and advised women to just stay home. Don't go out after dark, and if a singular police officer approaches you to question you, They literally said you should just yell out for help. These people were insinuating it was a woman's job to look over her shoulder and protect herself in the dark of night, as if we're living in the 1700s or something, because predators donned in police uniforms were now on the loose. In essence, the officials were saying, we're not interested in making changes to how we vet our new officers, and instead, you should just keep an eye out, and when someone else gets killed, we might show up and do something. Maybe. Yell out for help and we'll see how it goes. But we're not done. The Fire and Crime Commissioner, Philip Allett, had to resign following a vote of no confidence in October of 2021, after he suggested that women needed to learn how to be, quote, streetwise, and be knowledgeable about when they can and can't get arrested. I think it's time to just wrap this story up. I don't know how much more of this idiocy I can take. I know this story is a few years old, but I'd never actually heard of it until today. I had to opt out of the news media during the whole pandemic because I just couldn't stand it anymore. And stories like this, well, that's exactly why. Even though Wayne Couzens is now behind bars and the police are trying to clean up the mess they made, you can't help but think Sarah lost her life simply for walking home alone one night. She did nothing wrong. She wasn't even in a particularly dangerous area. A lone woman should never have to fear walking alone in the dark any more than a man should. I mean, we have to be honest, walking around in a city after dark is dangerous no matter who you are. But the fact that this entire police force was so dismissive just because it was a woman who was attacked is just so far beyond comprehension that these people need to be committed to some sort of a hospital. Sarah thought she was in a safe place in a police officer's presence, and rightfully so. But the very person who she thought was going to give her a slap on the wrist for violating lockdown restrictions turned out to be a monster by every definition of the word. The thing that bothers me most about stories like this is that it seems so many officials these days just want to treat symptoms of a problem. Don't want to get killed? Yell out for help. Don't want to be ambushed after dark? Don't go out at night. That's not the solution. The solution is getting to the bottom of the problem, increasing police presence where you can, firing every last officer who wasn't properly vetted during the hiring process, and having stricter guidelines on who can and can't join the police force. Now, I'm not saying that this will actually solve every single problem, but it is a start. It's some level of progress. You don't just shovel the blame onto the people who are already victimized the most by criminals. My heart bleeds for Sarah's family, because from where I'm sitting, it seems like she lost her life for nothing, literally for nothing. There's been virtually no progress made since that horrible day, and there don't appear to be any plans for change in the future. It was all such a waste. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. I wanted to give a special thank you to a couple channel members, including Mary Duncanson and Kate Turnbull. If you also want to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to new videos sometimes days or weeks before they're uploaded to the public. And it's currently the best way you can support the channel and help out. And I really appreciate those of you who have decided to do that. If you want to join, you can click that big join button below the video, or you can find the link down in the description. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and keeps you up to date with all of my future videos. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.